Some more now on Reid changing her story from a year ago. In 2019, she accused Biden of inappropriate touching, but not of assault. The New York Times reports that Reid first told the paper last year that Mr. Biden had publicly stroked her neck, wrapped his fingers in his hair, and touched her in ways that made her feel uncomfortable, but then waited until this past March to add significant details to the allegation.
By the way, that matched up with what another Bernie Sanders supporter had said last year, the allegations against Joe Biden. But go ahead.
In 2019, she also spoke with The Union, a local newspaper in California, which reported, quote, Alexandra Tara Reid said that in 1993, she was in her mid-20s when Biden, then a senator from Delaware, touched her several times, making her feel uncomfortable. Reid said her responsibilities in the senator's office were reduced after she refused to serve drinks at an event. Reid later said she didn't discuss the assault allegation because she was scared and not quite ready. I wanted to share the whole thing, but at the same time, I was too scared, Reid told Vox. I just wasn't quite ready. One other note on the timing of this allegation. Before she made her assault allegation, Reid was a Bernie Sanders supporter and an opponent of Joe Biden. NBC News reports that after previously supporting Marianne Williamson and Elizabeth Warren in the 2020 race, Reid was a constant presence on Twitter after Biden's huge Super Tuesday showing, tweeting and retweeting pro-Bernie Sanders and anti-Biden messages. It wasn't until after Sanders' loss in Michigan on March 15th that she tweeted about Biden's harassment and touching, but not the alleged sexual assault. 2 days later, she tweeted about harassment and, quote, more. And then on March 25th, she tweeted her interview with a progressive podcast host, her first reference on Twitter to the assault allegation. Multiple media outlets, including NBC News, The New York Times, and Business Insider, have reported that 5 people have said that Reid told them about her concerns regarding Senator Biden in the 1990s. We told you on Friday that on April 24th, video emerged of an unnamed woman that Reid says is her mother, calling into a 1993 broadcast of CNN's Larry King Live, devoted to examining the culture of Washington, D.C. The woman claimed that her daughter had run into unspecified problems with a U.S. senator. She did not give a name. Last week, one of the 5, a former neighbor of Reid's, went on the record by name, vouching for her, telling Business Insider that Reid told her her account of being assaulted roughly 2 to 3 years after the alleged account. Business Insider reports the person is a Democrat who intends to vote for Biden this year. NBC News contacted this same woman, and the details of what she told NBC News that Reid told her do match Reid's account. NBC News has also spoken with Reid multiple times since she came forward with the assault allegation, and has also spoken with 5 people whom Reid said she shared varying degrees of detail over time. 3 of those people said on the record that they do not recall any such conversation with Reid. A 4th person who spoke on the condition of anonymity said Reid told her about the alleged assault at the time. A 5th person who also spoke with NBC News anonymously recalled that Reid told her in the mid-2000s that Biden had been inappropriate and touched her when she worked in his office, but that she didn't mention anything about an assault. Reid said that she also told her mother, who has since died, and her brother, who has told The Intercept that he remembers having been told about an incident at the time. It's worth noting that Reid's brother first told some news organizations that at the time his sister said she had been harassed by Biden, but then went back to at least the Washington Post and ABC News to clarify that she told him it was an assault. NBC News has now also spoken with 14 people who worked in Biden's various offices at the time of Reid's alleged assault. 4 of them declined to comment. Most said they did not remember much about Reid specifically, and none of the former staffers said they had heard any complaints about Biden's behavior during their time in his office. The New York Times reports that in the course of its investigation, no other allegation about sexual assault surfaced in the course of their reporting, nor did any former Biden staff members corroborate any details of Reade's allegation. The Times found no pattern of sexual misconduct by Biden. The New York Times editorial board wrote on Friday evening that the Democratic National Committee should move to investigate the matter swiftly and thoroughly with the full cooperation of the Biden campaign. Also on Friday, after my questioning of Joe Biden, a number of women's groups came out with statements about the allegation. NARAL and Emily's List delivered a joint statement which reads in part, "It is critical that women be heard, that they be allowed to tell their stories without personal attacks or a system that shuts them down." Today, Joe Biden addressed Tara Reade's claims. Voters deserve the chance to hear from Biden, especially given how much is at stake in this election. And today they did. This debate is about the next election, the most critical in our lifetime. They go on to point out that voters have a choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and that Trump has never addressed the multiple credible allegations of sexual assault against him. Planned Parenthood's statement reads in part, quote, "We are glad to see Vice President Biden take a needed first step in addressing this issue head on. We now look to Biden to continue to push this conversation and our country forward." And Time's Up said in part, "We have reached a pivotal moment in our nation when candidates for president are accused of sexual assault. Today, Vice President Joe Biden sat down and directly addressed the allegation against him with the seriousness it deserves, something that the current president has never done. No longer can claims like this go ignored. Vice President Joe Biden needed to address Tara Reade's allegation today. We call for complete transparency into this claim and the multiple claims against President Donald Trump." It should be noted that Trump has denied each of the allegations against him. As for whether an allegation like this would have come up while Biden was being vetted to be President Obama's vice president, Andrea Mitchell, spoke with William Jeffress, the lawyer who led the team investigating Biden for the Obama campaign. And according to Jeffress, the background check included any kind of ethical misconduct, including sexual misconduct, and found no records of any complaints of any kind of harassment, sexual harassment, discrimination, or any misconduct of any kind against then Senator Biden. There are many curious aspects as well regarding this matter. In 2017, Reade praised Joe Biden several times for his actions in helping stop sexual assault. Reade liked and retweeted several posts praising Biden's work in this area. And that same year, she tweeted other compliments of Biden, including, "My old boss speaks truth. Listen." She also liked tweets of Biden praising Obama and a tweet that congratulated Biden for receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And one last item as it pertains to this story, the Medium posts that Reade wrote in 2018 where she heaped praise on Vladimir Putin. In one, she wrote, quote, "President Putin has an alluring combination of strength with gentleness. His sensuous image projects his love for life, the embodiment of grace while facing adversity." Reade later said these comments were taken out of context as part of a novel she was writing. Reade also wrote an article in 2018 stating that she left Washington because she was sick of American imperialism and because she loved Russia with all her heart. The posts are now deleted.
Adrienne Elrod, a lot to digest here. What's your takeaway?
Well, first of all, I think what's important here to keep in mind is that Joe Biden hit this head on. He sat for a very tough interview with you, Mika Brzezinski, and took every question directly. Didn't deny, didn't try to not answer questions, hit every question head on. He also was very, very respectful of Ms. Reade. He didn't question her motivations. He didn't question why she was coming forward. He just unequivocally, and I think very credibly, denied that he ever did this. And then he also took the transparent step of going to the Senate and saying, please look through these records and see if you can find anything, that would be a claim that she filed. This is 27 years ago. It's certainly not common that a United States senator, after leaving office, would keep personnel records. So he went to the Senate and asked them to look through those records. I don't know what more Vice President Biden could do right now. And I think also it's very important, and I applaud you guys for laying out the facts the way you did and taking the time to do that, because context here matters. And if we don't look at both sides of this argument and lay out the facts, then oftentimes that's what allows stories to take on a life of their own. We're 6 months away from the election. Stories have the ability to take on a life of their own, especially on social media. So it's very important that we lay out the facts. But again, I think Joe Biden handled this very effectively. Something else to keep in mind about Joe Biden, American voters trust him. His trust numbers are out the roof for a candidate running for the presidency, certainly much higher than Donald Trump. So that means when he comes out and makes a statement, when he says something, voters believe him. And that is a very important element to keep in mind as the story goes on.
It's probably why Joe Biden is crushing Donald Trump in so many states, and why Joe Biden is even pulling even in Texas and Georgia and across the country. This weekend, yesterday, Maureen Dowd wrote in her column about this, and also about the Me Too movement. And she referenced Brett Kavanaugh and Al Franken, suggesting there had been oversteps. And Maureen wrote this: as in any revolution, there was some overreaction. When liberals heralded the idea that all women must be believed, it made me wince, wrote Maureen Dowd. To suggest that every woman who alleges a sexual assault is as credible as the next is absurd. The idea that no woman can ever be wrong just hurts women. Who has ever been lied to by people of both genders? Half the human race is female. Peter Baker, it seems that as we move through this Joe Biden story, we are going to see the Democratic Party having a debate within itself, and a lot of media outlets having a debate about these standards. What should be applied to Joe Biden? What should newspapers do? What should media outlets do differently than they did during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings? Or Al Franken?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a very uncomfortable position for a lot of Democrats to be put in. Democrats who were very strong on opposing Brett Kavanaugh just a couple of years ago and have made the case on other instances of sexual misconduct, certainly taken on President Trump on that. I think it's uncomfortable, in fact, for the Trump campaign in some ways, because you have the Republicans going after not only Joe Biden, but every Democrat who supports Joe Biden, saying, who do you believe? And do you believe Tara? Do you take her seriously the way you say that women should be taken seriously when they make allegations of this sort? And then you have the president himself say, but, I kind of am siding in some level with Joe Biden, saying I've been accused falsely, and therefore, Joe, go out and fight it. And it's kind of a conflicting message there from the Trump campaign. They want to have it both ways. The president himself, who's been accused by so many women, talking about the likelihood of false allegations, certainly in his case, and you have Republicans on the other hand trying to press their advantage on this. And so it makes for a very ugly situation, one that's obviously polarized and partisan, made very partisan, and people are seeing these things through their partisan lens. People who believe in Joe Biden don't want to believe this of him, who look at his record on support for women's rights and various sexual assault legislation and so forth. Don't want to, accept this and are looking for reasons to doubt Tara Reade's account. At the same time, of course, Republicans are pressing it for their own political advantage. And it's just, it's hard to know where to fall down on this if you're somebody who wants to take these allegations very seriously.
Right, and it's very difficult for Donald Trump and Donald Trump supporters to push this because, of course, the 21 women, I believe it's 21 that we recounted on Friday, have accused Donald Trump of either sexual harassment or sexual assault. And, of course, you have Donald Trump on tape bragging on the Access Hollywood tape of sexually assaulting women because he's famous, says he can get away with it. So, Jonna Heilman, Mika's interview, obviously, on Friday drew a lot of attention. I'm curious, 3 days later, with everything that has happened between then and now, where do you put this story? What's your takeaway right now on the impact on the campaign?
I think that Adrian made the point that Joe Biden had done an effective job in his interview with Mika, and I think that is a consensus view of a lot of Democrats, and I think it's important to remember that is kind of one of the most important dynamics here is that before Biden's interview on Friday, as much of the criticism he was facing about people who wanted to hear from him, who said he needed to address this, the noise level was as much coming from the left, or more potentially coming from the left, as it was from the right. The right obviously tried to stoke this, as Peter just said, for political advantage, but also Sanders supporters and people on the left. And that's a difficult position for a campaign to be in when you're getting attacked by both your ostensible allies in the Democratic Party as well as your opponents on the Republican side. So I think a lot of Democrats that Joe Biden on Friday gave a lot of Democrats reasons to feel reassured. He addressed it head on in all the ways that Adrian said and so on. I think that there are a couple things that are outstanding. One of them is, I think, given all of the voluminous complexities and contradictions that Mika just laid out at the top of this block, I think it makes it all the more essential at some point, for Tara Reade is going to have to go on camera. And I think in the same way as I said on Friday that hearing from Joe Biden was essential, I think now in order to resolve a lot of these matters, to hear not just to hear what her story is in a clear, straightforward way, and also for her to have to address some of the contradictions and nuances of this story, it's all the more essential if she wants to be taken seriously for her to come out and address this on camera. And the last thing I'll say is this, Joe, you mentioned this and Mika did too. I think that it is important, of all the contextual things that I think about here. I really think that you go back to 2008. I know I wrote a book about this, about the 2008 campaign. I know what the vetting of the vice presidential nominees was like in the Obama campaign, and I know that it's hard to imagine that the Obama vetters would have missed this if there was a complaint filed in the United States Senate. I think it's almost inconceivable that they would have missed that complaint. And if that complaint had been there, that it would not have been a central question and probably disqualifying for Biden. And everyone who's now come forward and attested to that vetting process and everything that my reporting suggested at the time was that there was never a problem of this kind that came up around Biden. I think that may not be dispositive, but it's a pretty important piece of historical context, I think.
Well, I think of everything that we've heard over the past 3 days, that is as puts things into context as well as anything else, because we've all heard, and certainly 2008, 2012, and throughout time, we've all heard of potential vice presidential candidates who were disqualified because of the excruciating investigations that usually take place during the time between somebody is considered to be vice president and the time that somebody is selected as vice president. John Heilemann, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Peter Baker, we thank you as well. Thanks a lot for being with us. And Adrian Elrod, thank you so much as well. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.